If you can go to the next slide, Mila. Yeah, so we'll take it in turns to tell you who we are.
Okay, so hi, I'm Valentine. My pronouns are she and her. I'm fluid, and I'm a South African immigrant and Zulu. I'm Zulu to be specific, and I joined YWMP because they were doing a drum troupe, so I went there to learn drums. But I stayed for the environment and the people, and it being quite a lovely kind of cozy, safe space. Yeah, so that's me.
Hi, I'm Mila. My pronouns are she and her. I identify with the LGBTQ community. I'm also an immigrant from the Philippines, and I joined Young Women's in 2014 when I was 14, because the environment and the culture really contrasted with what was available in other music services in Oxford.
Hey everyone, I'm Zara. My pronouns are she, they. I'm working class and biracial Irish Iranian. I also identify as queer when it comes to gender and sexuality. Um, so yeah, we put a little note at the bottom, which is that we're all neurodivergent. So interrupting might interrupt us. So if you could just write any questions that you have at the bottom, that would be really great, and then we'll get back to them at the end. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next slide, please, Mida.
Sal, the warning at the bottom.
Yeah, we just did it, Mila.
Oh no, in the notes.
Oh.
Oh no, I'll get to that. Don't worry.
Okay, great.
So yeah, YWMP is a safe space for women, girls, and non-binary people who are comfortable centering the experiences of women. Music is the tool that we use, but the environment we create sets a tone that allows people to be themselves, take off their armor, and create, which helps to find a space of belonging. So the project seems to be a place where those who feel othered go. There aren't many spaces built with integrity where people can attend without feeling like a tick box exercise or a statistic. As you know, Oxford is complex. As a city, it has one of the wealthiest universities in the country, maybe world. I don't actually know the facts there, but also the second largest council estate in Europe, one of the highest rates of homelessness in the UK, and named as the most unaffordable city to live in without the wages to match. So YWMP is an anti-racist and fully intersectional feminist organisation from the core, and we haven't gone out of our way to make the project diverse. It just seems to naturally happen. The reason why will become clearer as we go through the presentation. We've always been based in East Oxford until 3 years ago when we moved to Make Space in North Oxford. Some of us, including myself, have rarely visited the part of town that Make Space is in. It's been a massive learning experience for us, and the treatment of the project and young people we work with has been a shock at times, but we are well aware of why and what when these difficulties come up. So just to mention, this is like this slide will be on for a while because I've got a lot to say before we get fully going. This past year has been difficult for everyone, but especially people of colour. With the disproportionate amount of deaths due to COVID-19, the rise in deaths in the trans community, and the poignant moment when the world stood still and then took it to the streets after the death of George Floyd. Just to make it clear that none of the contents of this is an attack on anybody. So just a bit of a warning there, or to point out flaws in people or to make anyone feel bad. This is just a true representation of how we experience being in Oxford in the charity sector as marginalised people. And this is a trigger warning also that we will be discussing some sexual assault, violence and racial abuse. If you want to turn off your camera or leave at any time, please feel free to. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a bit about the culture and the methodology of YWMP, just to sort of set the scene of how we do things, because sometimes the basic things like make it clearer for everybody to understand where we're at as a project. So our space is created completely by the young people, everything from the room itself that we designed at Makespace down to the decision making. When you enter our space, you're welcomed, you're asked how you are. This is obviously pre-COVID times. Offered food and drink and introduced to each other and listened to. We are prepared to challenge any comments or behaviour that may not meet the ethics of the project, but in a safe, calm and collective way. So we believe in call out culture, not in an aggressive way, but it's part of how we do things, and everyone is involved and able to listen and learn from it. And when that happens, we usually see huge amounts of growth. So as I said that before, decisions are made by the young people. There is even transparency with our budget, so they're included in all those decision making. I'm gonna give you a little bit of a backstory into why I'm part of the project and how that happened, because it's very unique in terms of this sector we all work in. So I joined Young Women's Music Project when I was 14. I'm now 32, so it's a long time ago. And I joined the project as a participant, just looking for somewhere where I could express myself, really. Things were a bit tough at that time, and I didn't ever, I grew up in East Oxford off Cowley Road, and I didn't ever really understand diversity at that age. Like, I lived in a diverse home, I grew up in an area that was diverse, like my school was diverse. Like, it wasn't something that really occurred to me until I went to this project, which was based at ArcT at the time, because I was one of the only working class kids and from like a mixed background. It was quite unusual for me to be in that setting. Within a couple of years, the woman who set up Young Women's Music Project, Kate Garrett, offered me a traineeship, and I wasn't getting on in school. Like, I was very detached from education and was sort of trying to navigate the world through my own traumas and things at that age. So being offered that opportunity massively boosted my confidence, and it gave me like an option. I know that might sound a bit much in terms of how things are, but it really did. Like, school wasn't an option for me at that age, or further education. So that, I took it massively on board, and I was just like, this is what I want to do. So I trained with Kate until I was 21. She sadly passed away. She was ill for quite a few years, and I took the project on myself, which is not what she wanted, really, I don't think, but it was definitely what I wanted to do, and I wanted to like fly the flag for all the work that she'd put in over the years. The project itself is now 21 years old, which is a pretty big achievement to keep going and sustain for that long. So when I turned 21, I decided to develop the project and make it something that happened more frequently. It only happened once a month at the time. But this is just an example of someone like me who comes from like a very diverse background, to be able to say that when I was listened to, engaged, supported and given training, like, it nurtured me to a point where I can actually say this is my job now and I get paid to do it. And it's, you know, I'm supporting so many other women and girls that are coming up through the Oxford music scene. So yeah, I wanted to just touch on how our project responds to the participants and incidents that come up. So this part of the presentation is very much about the project. Then we'll go into more detail about what happens in society and how we can, you know, do better. So our project is unique in the sense that I deliver most of the sessions, so I have a very one-to-one connection with the young people, and I know them, and there's trust built there. So when incidents come up, we can respond in that way, and I know that this might not be something that every charity or social enterprise can do. So I'm just going to give an example here. There were two young women that attended the project for quite a long time, and when they were about 15, 16, they were at a gig in Oxford, and both of them were sexually harassed and one was sexually assaulted at the gig by one of the support bands that were on tour. Now, I got a call at about midnight from them and they're really distressed. The police are involved and everything. And we had a young woman who's a little bit older than them that was at the concert, and she called security. Otherwise, they wouldn't have felt like they had the strength to do that in that moment. But the aftermath of that is what I want to talk about a bit more, is that they came to me with what had happened and said there was a lot of pressure from the police to not take it to court. They were about to do their GCSEs. They felt like it was something that they couldn't do and they were afraid to sort of do that. The venue didn't really do anything. The promoter didn't do anything. So the next day they came to see me in a session and I asked them, what is it that you want to happen? And they said, I don't want that band to ever play again. And I was like, well, I don't know if I can make that happen, but I'll try. So we made a post where we publicly told the band what they'd done and the harm that they'd caused, and they were quickly taken off the tour. So we were really happy that by calling out this incident publicly, those young people got the result that they wanted. So that's just a very sort of responsive way in which our project reacts to things safely, because it was a group effort and it was all with them and what they wanted in mind. The project tries to steer clear of hierarchical structures, even though we are a charity with a board of trustees. The young women can join that board and can be a part of decision making on that level if they want to, but by trying to stay clear of hierarchical structures, we also in ourselves helped dismantle white supremacy. It's really hard to not pay attention to hierarchies and hierarchies because it's the way society's set up. But for instance, me as the director saying, oh, I put all of the decision making for the young people, but I'm being paid more, kind of doesn't add up. So by me saying that everything we do is split 50-50, every time we get a gig, we split the fees. I mean, in this instance for today, we're paying the people who are contributing. It's not exactly 50-50, but it's a contribution. And even our volunteers get given vouchers, food and travels. But if we put on concerts, we always split the fees with the artists. And we really try to make that part of the culture of the project. Okay, so now I'm just going to swiftly move to these statistics in front of you here. This is just a representation of 27 of our participants. You've probably read it loads because the slide's been up for ages, but this is what we did at the end of last year to just get, I try not to ask the participants a lot for these sort of stats because I find it can be quite triggering for people to be talking about things that they may not be sure of or working through. But this is just an example really of where we're at in terms of who attends the project. And yeah, so I'm going to move on now to a video which was made during a training program we created a few years ago. It's about 12 minutes long, but it gives you a real understanding of it from the young people's perspective. So I'll leave that to play. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Zara, the director of Young Women's Music Project. This project transformed my life as a past participant when I didn't think things could get any worse. It helped me recognise my full potential and stand up against the things I felt uncomfortable about in my life and within the music industry. Now, as the director of the project, I can only thank each and every young woman that has walked through our doors for allowing me to be part of their journey, whether it has helped them in the short term or helped them create a career path. I cannot wait to see what they bring to the world with the seeds this project has planted. The goal of YWMP is to ultimately create a sisterhood of women so strong that they can truly feel liberated and freed through the medium of music, supporting each other every step of the way. The Young Women's Music Project is an educational charity based in Oxford, which provides an inclusive and supportive space for young women aged 14 to 21. It allows them to make music together, learn new skills, express themselves and grow in confidence. In the free music sessions and workshops, the young women make and record music, plan and hold gigs and events, and discuss issues affecting young people. For 18 years, YWMP has brought cutting-edge projects, gigs, exhibitions and talks to Oxford in high-profile institutions through partnerships with hospitals and schools and organisations for vulnerable young people. The project helps young people triumph over issues affecting them, such as class, race, sexuality, gender and mental health, in a creative and productive way. I interviewed 6 young women who all entered the project at different times and in different ways. I started by asking them to set the scene of how we met.
So I was 11 years old and I had a friend that we both liked to sing, so they introduced me to Zara and obviously I came to the studio at ArcT and got to know everyone, joined a Young Women's Music Project and kind of learnt to build some confidence in the groups. I went once a week, I think it was to start off with. I like to record and do lots of singing there and writing.
I met Zara at Pegasus. I was doing a music course there, like a music production course, for like 2 years.
So I was 16, just coming from GCSEs, and but unfortunately I wasn't able to go to college because of being an inpatient. So there was like nothing laid out for me. I was just been told that I wouldn't be going to college, so, and at the time that was a big deal because it was like, great, so where am I going? I'm just stuck in this hospital, like waiting to see what happens.
Most of the young women I've worked with had not experienced women-only music sessions or seen a woman deliver a class in music before. I asked them what motivated them to come along to our sessions.
I think what motivated me to come to the sessions was just like, I had a bit of like a hole, I think, in my life then. I didn't know like really who I was then or what I wanted to do.
I think music it gave me like a way to carry on, and I didn't have nowhere else to go where I could express that. Like, I mean, I've been to other youth groups before, but I mean, you don't feel, I don't know how to explain it, like you don't feel comfortable, you don't have that connection, the way, I feel like it's more one-to-one with you and you actually look at us as an individual and, you know, go off of how we feel and what we're going through in that moment of time. And I think that made me comfortable, and because I had such a passion to sing, being comfortable with it as well, I was determined to keep going, to get there and to get as much as possible out of it.
When I started making music with boys, and it was always like, you're too cocky, you're not like we want a female bassist because they're sexy, or like or like, oh, you're a diva, you're too bossy. And it's like, but if it was when you boss me around, it's just because you're a good leader or because you know more than me.
Being a minority within a minority group, within a scene which is predominantly male, especially being someone who wears a hijab, being black as well, and in a community that, you don't really see women just in general of an ethnic background doing something that they love, and regardless of what is said or the pressure's being put on them, still doing it.
I didn't know like really who I was then or what I wanted to do, and Zara was so like open and nice, and it's kind of hard to meet people in like a kind of teaching position to be so kind of less formal and more like real. You felt like a real person, and I wanted to come, and I just felt like it gave me something, like from the first time I went, it gave me something that I never had before.
I've discovered over the years that many women, including myself, face barriers to access music. If safe spaces like YWMP didn't exist, these young women wouldn't have given making music a second thought. Here are a few examples of barriers they've faced.
So I'd say school was quite a big barrier for me, because all of the girls just did singing, and I wasn't very comfortable with singing. Like, I just didn't feel like that was my musical talent. And like, then I had these group of boys that I hanged out with, and like in school they weren't very like, they didn't take women seriously in their music making process.
Oxford's so limited. Like, there was only like 3 organisations that were smaller, and they weren't, I didn't feel like they were as open as YWMP, like certain genre you had to do, and like you could only really, if you wanted to play a musical instrument, you only had Oxford County Music and have music lessons, and you could only play classical music. I played the cello, and all I could ever do is play classical music, and that's not what I wanted to do. And it just felt so restricted. There wasn't much option or choice, and as like a young woman, going to spaces that are very male-dominated.
My school was awful. They were putting me in classes with boys who assaulted me. They were aware of it. You know, the police were actually involved in the case, so they were aware, and all they did was exclude the boys for 3 months and then bring them back in, and then expected me to go into classrooms with them and learn with them, which I wasn't going to do. So then I was getting kicked out of school every week for refusing to go to lessons that I'm obviously not going to go into if there's people in there that have assaulted me.
That time leading up to college, the only access that I did have to music was Young Women's, in terms of making and learning and getting more involved with, you know, what I could potentially be in for future years in college.
It was almost like they were punishing me for not dealing with my issues the way they want me to deal with them.
I mean, we live in such a society where women are not, sadly, as valued as they should be. And so we have to work 10 times harder at whatever it is.
YWMP is a second home to many. It provides a non-judgmental atmosphere and freedom to make mistakes. It also allows young women to build their confidence to showcase their musical skills. It was important for me to ask these 6 young women what YWMP meant to them.
YWMP means to me freedom, confidence, and inspirational motivation.
Actually haven't performed since I've had a baby, which I noticed.
So there was a time in college when I felt quite ill again. So I wound up in A&E quite a few times because my heart rate dropped so low. Because I didn't care about college, or like, obviously my immediate thoughts was family, and then straight after that it was, well, I'm never going to be able to get to Young Women's again if I don't go back into treatment. And when I was in treatment again, Young Women's was what I wanted to get out of treatment, and so it's literally why I'm here.
In the sense of being a mother, you've always said to me to bring Nevaeh along with me, which was really nice. So I know that that wouldn't have to actually stand in the way in terms of working with you.
YWMP is my home, my second home. Yeah.
Thanks for sitting through that. I'm just going to pass you on to Mila now, who's going to talk a bit more in detail about language.
So we thought it was quite important to break down some of the words that we were using, because I think quite a few people hear them a lot without it being explained in detail and contextualized. I think quite a few of these words are thrown around at the moment as buzzwords without any real nuance or discussion. So I'll try to be not too detailed with each one, but there is a lot, so please pace yourself. So diversity and inclusion. Diversity is the what and inclusion is the how. So diversity focuses on the makeup of the workforce with demographics such as gender, race, ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, just to name a few. And inclusion is a measure of culture that enables diversity to thrive. Another thing we're going to be talking about later is tokenism, and that is diversity without inclusion. So the effort to meet numerical diversity goals or create the appearance of diversity without making effective changes. It links to, I think a lot of people know this, but it links to performative activism. So it's when an individual or perhaps a company only care what they look like they're doing as opposed to the efforts or the actions towards what they're saying they're doing. So then we have some abbreviations. POC means person or people of colour and is used to describe any person who is not considered ethnic white. BAME stands for Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic. BIPOC is used for Black, Indigenous and other people of colour. It aims to emphasise the historic oppression of Black and Indigenous people. That's usually used more in the US than over here. And then we have LGBTQIA+, which is an abbreviation for lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, transgender, queer, intersex, agender, asexual. I think the abbreviations change for LGBTQ quite a lot, but I think the plus is really important to acknowledge that it's not just limited to that. So then we have ableism and disability. So ableism is the discrimination in favour of able-bodied people. Ableism is rooted in the assumption that disabled people require fixing and is defined by their disability. So a lot of people, especially in the project, have things such as disabilities, but quite a lot of them have invisible disabilities, things that can span neurodivergence, which is covers sort of things like ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and autism, other health conditions that are completely invisible to people who see you walking down the street. I think a few people in the project have endometriosis, which is a particularly pressing subject for young women because a lot of them do not get believed by their own doctors and it takes years and years and years for them to be formally diagnosed and then treated well. And it's a very debilitating disability, but the fact that it only affects women, and especially their reproductive organs, and it especially affects younger women, really shows the attitudes we have towards them in the society. So some sort of ableist phrases that get said a lot, and it's not a way of us saying, calling people out or sort of saying like, you're a horrible person if you've said this. We're just trying to inform you that this is ableist, even if you don't mean it in that way. So saying stuff like, you're acting so bipolar today, are you off your meds? She's such a psycho, I'm super OCD about how I do stuff. Or even saying, oh, I don't even consider you as disabled, and saying that as a compliment isn't the most sensitive thing to say. So then we have tone policing, which is an ad hominem or a personal attack, and an anti-debate tactic used to dismiss people's feelings and emotions, especially used towards POC or Black POC. It's a racial microaggression, so it involves verbal, behavioural, environmental indignities that communicate intentional or unintentional hostile attitudes. An example could be calm down so we can discuss this as adults. I feel as if I've heard people say that a lot to my friends who identify as Black and as women when they're trying to express an idea or disagree with something. They sort of get categorized as an angry Black woman. It criticizes the emotionality of what the person is saying as opposed to the message itself. So then we have women with an X and a Y, and non-binary people. So the Y and the X substitutes to avoid the suffix men, to achieve independence from patriarchal linguistic norms, to challenge the biblical concept that women are only subsets of men, and non-binary is a spectrum of gender identities that are not exclusively masculine or feminine or male or female. And then we have systematic and systemic racism. I'm sure that this one's a little bit confusing. So systematic involves system, and systematic racism is prejudice or discrimination methodically implemented according to a fixed plan or procedure against a race, whereas systemic racism is relating to a system. It's more structural, inherent and ingrained, and quite frankly, it's really insidious. So it's a prejudice and discrimination that is based solely on race and occurs and affects the whole societal system of a nation. I think a lot of people don't understand that we are all affected by systemic racism. People of colour are affected in the way that they can ingrain this racism and be racist towards other people of colour, their family, themselves. It's ingrained in everyone's beliefs. And I think it's really important that we all take steps to recognise and move away from it, instead of feeling guilty or feeling that only one race can be racist, or feeling that it's this sort of conceptual racism is a conceptual thing as opposed to a real life physical thing that affects everyone. So then I had this diagram of privilege and societal norms. As a sort of community, we really like to emphasize intersectionality. So intersectional feminism is a term coined by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, I think in the 80s or 90s, and it's the interconnected nature of societal categorizations such as race, class, and gender, as they apply to a given individual or group, and is regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. So white privilege is a topic discussed a lot in the current socio-political climate, and refers to people of colour. It refers to the advantages people of colour do not experience. It's usually misinterpreted as white people have never experienced hardships in their life, but it actually means that people of colour are affected by the colour of their skin, and white people haven't experienced the kind of oppression or privilege of having this in their life. Other privileges and their burdens include sort of male privilege, so misogyny for women, and then cis or hetero privilege, and then on the other side people will experience transphobia and homophobia. Class privilege, so people of working class will experience class discrimination. Health and ability, so this links to ableism, so people who are disabled experience stigma and disability discrimination. And then we have sort of slim and skinny privilege. It's proven that if you are slim or skinny, you experience things or are given a lot more benefit of the doubt from GPs about not lying about what you're telling them, sort of being awarded more jobs, things like that. So people who do not have this privilege experience things such as fat phobia and body shaming. And then we have religious privilege, and unfortunately on the other side of that, we have anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. This is a quick diagram that I think really explains what we're looking for, which is justice. So inequality on the top left says unequal access to opportunities. Equity on the top right says custom tools that identify and address inequality. And then equality with a question mark, which I think the whole world is struggling with at the moment, is evenly distributed tools and assistance, which you can see isn't always fair or even useful. And then justice, which is fixing the system to offer equal access to both tools and opportunities. I'm just going to pass it over to Valentine now.
Okay, so hi. So I'm going to dive into performing diversity, but when I was thinking about it, I realized that there's a lot of examples. I think a lot of people know about brands, and you hear about, like a company's done, has kind of, their messaging was a bit wrong, and people are angry on Twitter. But I didn't want to just look it up and then go, look at this. But I wanted to actually pull it from my own experience. So this is actually a photo from my university, and the post is from Goldsmiths, and it's the pictures of drama and theatre students taking their lunch break on the field. And the story behind it is that a person working for the university's social media page approached them and asked to take a picture. And the students didn't actually know what it was for at the time, but they kind of agreed. And a few minutes after the picture was taken, a post went up. And it read, as you can see, it says #WeAreInternational on the image itself. And then the actual post accompanying it says, "We're proud that almost 40% of our students are international, making up over 114 different nationalities. To celebrate our diversity, we're joining the British Council in sharing stories of what it's like studying in the UK as an international student." Now, when I saw this, I actually had I laughed, but I'll tell you why later. But there was a problem in the post, and it is true. It's a true fact that Goldsmiths did have almost 40% international students, and most of the people that I worked with, was studying with, and also lived with, were mostly international students. And so that is true. But the big issue is actually with the picture, because I know every single person in that photo. This is one half of my study group. And I was indoors, not taking my break while this was happening. And another fact is that no one in that photo is international. None of them were from outside of the UK. None of them were even from outside of London, miraculously. So all of them, so it was very weird, because everyone else, because it's one half of our group, everyone else, there was someone from Mongolia, there was someone from Greece, there was someone from America, and me as well from South Africa. But we were all watching it, and we did leave some funny comments, but we realized very quickly that it didn't actually matter if the post was correct for their intention, because their intention was the appearance of diversity to accompany that claim. So they just needed that. They saw a few colorful, a group where there was a bit of diversity within it. Some people looked as if they were from a different country, it seems, and so they decided to do that. But then that is how it can lead to tokenism. And so tokenism is the practice of doing something such as hiring a person who belongs to a minority group only because you want to prevent criticism or give the appearance that people are being treated fairly within the group. It is diversity on a superficial level without the inclusion part. It is the absence of consistently making the effort to include people in underrepresented groups, and it is just being aesthetically diverse. We see it a lot in makeup as well, where they have loads of different shades of beige and just 3 shades of brown, and it's kind of, but then in the post there's kind of an equal amount of models of different races. And so it is the absence of consistently making the effort to include people, and I said that, but it is without any effort or desire to help improve the lives of people in minority groups who experience inequality or discrimination every day. And the only way to avoid tokenism, the only way to avoid superficial diversity is to be inclusive, because very quickly people who are diverse, people who are people of color, people who are international, people who are of different faiths and stuff can quickly tell you, no, that is not what you do. And that stops it. So I would like just, the best thing is to just ask yourself as well, if you are including representation in your organization, your staffing and marketing, because you see the value of diversity and what it brings to the table, or do you want to tick a checkbox and to be seen to be diverse? And you shouldn't need to talk about how diverse your brand is just to make a point. It defeats the objective of inclusion and it becomes performative. And consumers can instantly observe how diverse a brand actually is or isn't. It should consistently be demonstrated in your brand aesthetic, your language, your content, your behavior, and your network. And by continually making an effort to include diversity, and intention is everything. And it can be easily kind of focused into the reaction of if there's a difference in when a person of color says, it tells someone, there is diversity and inclusion in this company that I work for, than when a white person says to people, there is diversity and inclusion in this company. Very quickly, maybe it's just because I'm a minority, my little feelers come out, my spidey senses tingle, and I shake my head and walk away. So one thing is just being authentic, and sometimes being authentic doesn't mean that all the time that you have to be not inclusive, but that you have to involve everybody. So for Young Women's Music Project, of course, everyone is involved in things, but we have very also specific spaces for women to kind of focus on different aspects. So currently, because of lockdown, we've been having sessions called the Tier 5 Toolkit, where we focus on mental health, mindfulness. We do meditation and yoga. We share about our days and kind of struggles that we deal with. And of course, people who don't want to talk about that are free to not join, but this is specifically it is a space specifically made for that. And of course, there's sessions where it's only for teenagers, like young women in high school, where where it's heavily focused on them. And as I'm 26, I'm not allowed, which I don't feel bad about. I don't want to be a teenager anymore. And so if you cultivate an environment that is go to the next slide. So that is that, and Sarah's gonna start on this. So yeah,
I was just going to explain the story behind the Black Lives Matter statement for our project specifically. So last year there was a lot of pressure to put out a statement, and I saw many organizations doing this, and like I understand that it came from a place of solidarity, but as an anti-racist organization, I felt like, how are we going to do this without just sort of looking like we're jumping on a bandwagon, which I really didn't feel like was a good reflection of what we do, because we implement it in everything we do. So I didn't want to be like, we're doing this thing and we're going to do better. We want to do better, but we also were doing pretty well before. So I wanted to just say, like, I brought together 3 of the Black women that were accessing the project a lot at that time, and just we all got on a call, and people were just venting their feelings at the moment and the things that they'd been experiencing from friends and other people, and sort of like the social media, the Blackout Tuesday or whatever it was, and all this people posting lots of infographics about how to be less racist and things like this, or be anti-racist, should I say. So what came from that was that the young women that were on the call, which included Valentine, decided to take our Zoom account and just record a conversation amongst themselves. And this is where I, was not involved from that moment on. And it was less of a statement and more of like the facts of how they felt about the project, Oxford, and what was currently happening globally. So yeah, I'll hand it back to you, Valentine.
Destiny, sure.
Valentine, for sure. YWMP is about the voices of young women. So I was just like, let's just talk.
Big up Sarah. But also an amazing woman and a woman of colour too. She can talk on issues as well that she faces. But I totally respect as well her reincorporating the people that go to the project. That just emphasises how even more amazing it is as a space for people of colour, that we're, not sat at the back of the room thinking these things and not being able to say it. We're actually saying it.
Cardoso, and then Adam Stanmore. It's just that annoyance of there is not that much information, and then, again, there is no reason why someone should lose their lives.
Things go wrong, and that's what's happened with the police. They just go unchecked, and like this, you know, like you said about these two cases with these two men in Oxford, which I'm sure would blow a lot of people's minds that don't know about it. It's gone unchecked, which is so wrong. Since when? You know, when you think about it, it's so important that we see people like us, people of colour, black people, talking about these things. Even now, it's like died down way more than it was like a week ago.
I hope this momentum continues, and people, because it's exhausting. Black people are tired too.
Oh my god!
Oh, can you believe
like,
it?
girl,
Yes.
I don't know. That's been happening long before you messaged me. Like, what do those statues do? They don't do anything. Like, there's no.
Do they pay your bills?
It was stupid to even think that I want to be anything other than I am.
But now I'm just thinking, like, I'm trying to say it. I saw in the mirror. This is a disservice. No, we're not racist. Yeah. But we are.
But yeah, it's through young women you'll make contacts. You're allowed to do things and feel safe, which is so underrated. Like, it's not that we can't do things; it's doing things and feeling safe.
Our lives should have the same value as everyone else's. It took 6 years for people to agree. I don't want people to lose interest and stop caring about people's lives. It needs to continue. That's why a statement feels like a full stop.
This is one of many constant statements. You know? It's like, it's, you know, we're constantly making
it's not even a statement, it's a fact. It's a fact. So that is what I had. Zara's very polite in the way that she actually framed the way that we took over and usurped the Zoom login for YWMP and said, we'll do the statement, because we had been having the same conversations for so long. And then, of course, everyone was posting statements, and we had this thing of, but what we were gearing up to do things. So then there was kind of a function and kind of a procedure to follow, where it's like, okay, first you post a statement, but we were gearing up to take the streets. So then I decided that instead of having actually a statement, maybe people need to look into, maybe get a glance at our conversations, because they happened like that constantly. So that, and then this is the second step of what we did. So yeah.
Feels so long ago now. Well, I'm just conscious that we're running low on time, so I'm going to try and speed the next few things up. So this is just another example of things that we've seen on social media a lot. And it's not like a diss at people that speak like this, really. I just want to like show the differences in how to be less performative in your postings. So as you can see, the one on the left is very much about stating how many people were helped, and it's a like with YWMP, it's a relationship and trust that we have with the young people. So it's hard to get 95 people's opinions, but it's good to be able to highlight where possible when somebody feels comfortable to share that they've got something out of what you give them. So YWMP do offer food bank services to a couple of the mothers that have who are single parents with 2 children each, and one of the women has said to me, like, she's got way back into cooking, and she sends me all these videos of her making food, and she's only in her early 20s. She's been part of the project for many years, and this is just to show that it's very different to be like, we're giving you food, to look a young person actually being comfortable to go, look what I've cooked with the food you gave me. So it's less of this savior complex of, I'm saving 95 people. Like, we have posted things like us picking food up, but it's never like a constant thing about us bragging about who we've helped, because some people, especially working class people who are suffering at the hands of this pandemic on a different level, are saying like they're too proud to ask for help. So by doing this and it being a genuine action from them, it's not like, it's like gives them agency and respect. And it's not like we're sat here bragging about what we've done for others. It's about permission also. It's a bit like when you donate something to a homeless person and film yourself doing it to put it on social media. So that's basically one of the things that we wanted to touch on briefly about social media posting, and how this is actually quite alienating and isolating for the people you help if you do post things constantly about how you're supporting people. Can we go to the next one, please? So I was just going to start this one and then hand over to Valentine quickly. So I was just going to give a quick example, but you can see here about how diversity works in the workplace and stuff. We use the word Karen sometimes. It's a pseudonym for like white women who use their racial privilege. So in positions of diversity in workplaces, we spoke very much about how if your HR person is white, there should be a person of color also. If your disability officer would have to understand the nuances of people with disabilities by having a disability. It's just about diversifying your workforce by giving the training and support to people that are actually in those roles. I wanted to give an example of like when somebody can use their position of power to make somebody who is of a diverse background feel awful on their first day. And then I'll just quickly move past that. But I used to work a bit for the Oxford County Music Service, and I was brought in to work with more of the at-risk young people who were like living in hospital and things like that. And I had to get a DBS check done, and I brought in all my paperwork, and one of the pieces of paperwork that I brought in was a marriage certificate when I was married. So I brought that in, and the woman came back with all my papers. She just photocopied them all, and she said something like, why didn't you change your name when you got married? And I was like, sort of shocked, and just said, oh, I like my name, like I didn't want to change it. And she was like, oh, you would have had a lot less trouble if you did change it. And did you get married to stay in the country? Like that sort of thing was coming out of her mouth, and I was so set back by it. I didn't know what to do. And at that point, that was like 10 years ago, I didn't have the language or the understanding of what, I just knew it felt uncomfortable. I spoke to my colleague and then reported it to the Musicians Union, but it, you know, these kinds of things are said with such flippancy, and it's not really taken into account. But it's just a way to describe how you can be really isolated quite quickly without thinking about what you're saying. So I'm just going to pass this to Valentine to show us a little bit about these 3 slides. So
basically the slides kind of say, speak for themselves in a way, but like Sarah says, I really need to stress about that this point, that if the majority of the group is uniform, and when I mean uniform, maybe you are of the same race and of the same backgrounds, of the same religion, same age, around the same age range, political beliefs have kind of, and there's like a majority of a certain sexual orientation, gender, and things like that. And then within this group, the people of color are brought in to be the diverse, to kind of be the diversity within this majority. And that's where the diversity of education, belief, sexual orientation is. That just means that is where the diversity and the difference stays. So then that also means that when you think of ableism, or you think of LGBTQ, it's associated with not white, or it's associated with the minority group within the larger group. And so what needs to happen is within the majority group, if you diversify age, if you diversify physical ability, or education, socioeconomic backgrounds, and kind of even political beliefs, then you even have diversity and differing opinions and ideas growing from people that look like you, people that speak like you. It actually helps as well. I always think of, I had a job where my manager was one of my shop floor manager. She was this older lady, and she had this very thick Scottish accent. And there was a girl who actually was from, where is she from? She had a thick accent. She was from Russia, yes, and she had a thick accent. And I remember there was a point where people were saying, "Oh, I don't." One of the younger new trainees said, "Oh, I don't get her accent. It's so difficult." And then I had thought, "Ooh, is this about the Russian girl?" And then he was like, "No, my Scottish manager." Sometimes she then starts saying things, and it's this thing of no one, if it's only related to the hired, the brought in diversity, then it's always associated with the minority. So if you diversify in that way, and then as it says here, there is when a group or a charity or a co-op is inclusive, the actual growth and development and ideas, they benefit from that, and it actually kind of grows, like I think 35%, that's on the second slide. And the biggest thing that I always have to emphasize is being transparent in hiring process. If you set your goals and you are honest about in the hiring process, if you say to the applicants, we are looking to be more inclusive in a space, we are on a journey to be inclusive. So it isn't a thing of we hire you and that's it. But if it's like we will be looking to hire more and more people, and another thing is that you shouldn't hire people just because of their race or just because of their religion, but you should hire them because they do well in their job. Then, and also, one thing is, if the best, easiest way is to just remove, during the interviewing process, if you remove the applicant's name, so it removes the initial subconscious bias of, oh, their name looks complicated, oh, they must be from here, oh, that seems like hard work. Because as soon as you actually are introduced to that person and they tell you their name, of course you can hear it and then you can understand it, and it's way more face to face. Because a lot of times, my last name is Sitole, and a lot of times people then go, oh, where is she from? And loads of questions come from that. So if that's just removed, then people see the qualifications and they then overlook the initial bias that people of color, minorities face. So yes, so next slide.
So I think we might skip through a couple and go to the formula, and I'll just summarize it all in that, because I don't want to like drag this bit out. If you could skip to the formula, please, Nina, one more slide. Yeah. So we did this training program in 2016. No, 2018, sorry, called Changing Herstory, and it was a funded project that we delivered with the help of Rosa, and we worked with Torch and other leaders in the community who trained a group of young people to get research about the barriers that women face in the Oxford music scene. So this is very specific to women and music, but it can be transferred across all sorts of different things that you might want to be more inclusive with in terms of your charity or social enterprise. This is the formula we came up with. Young people, you saw the film about the young people that was part of the project, and then we created an actual training program that we delivered at Western Library. Then lots of people from, you know, the BBC introducing group to promoters to music organisations in Oxford showed up, and I think people learned a lot about how they could be more inclusive in terms of including women in their work. But this is also transferable to everything. So observe, so you identify the problem. It's kind of what we've done today. Think through in your organisation who, what, where, why, how, and then get feedback through a test from another perspective, and then act. And we've said it's okay to start small. And with this training program, we've developed loads of ways to be able to consult organisations. We're really happy to be able to offer that to people if you wanted more in-depth knowledge and support and all of this kind of stuff. And I think we've got one more slide, and then we can take some questions. So the ending notes are just to say thank you to everybody, and that we feel like it's everyone's job to invest in diversity, research and expand network. And if you need support, it is your job to seek it out, whether that's through consultancy or training, like this workshop, for example. So thanks for coming along. It is vital in sustaining and creating an inclusive culture in your workplace. Conversations are uncomfortable and emotionally draining. So if you are part of the problem, it's time to really start discovering the solution. So we're here to help, and here to listen for the next 20 minutes and answer any questions that you may have had. Thank you. This is the second time we've delivered something like this, so we're really happy that we could do that with a group like this. So thanks for your
time. I just wanted to add that for this sort of workshop sort of thing we're doing, it's appropriate for you guys to ask us questions because we are being compensated and paid for it. I wouldn't recommend going up to your friends with disabilities or a POC and sort of interrogating them or bombarding them when it's not appropriate, because that can be a very overwhelming and isolating feeling. Also, unless they are head of some sort of organization that represents their disability or ethnicity, they don't speak for everyone. I think it'd be nice to sensitively ask them what their experiences are, but please don't make them uncomfortable by immediately after this feeling you have to ask everyone about it.
Thank you.
So I'm just gonna stop sharing now.
Yeah, I think we're ready for some questions. You can ask us without writing it down if you would prefer.
Just put your hand out, yeah. Or okay. We're just getting compliments at the moment. Thank you, thank you. Okay. Any questions? Yes. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. I suppose just in that slide, before the last slide, you kind of looked at sort of a process that an organisation might go through, and you kind of put some sort of like who, what, where, why questions. And I just wondered if you could go into like maybe a little bit more depth of like what sort of questions organisations might be asking themselves.
So I think for that specifically, so it was very much about, say, the setting of a gig, so a venue, like why are there no women doing the sound? So you'd ask yourself, like, how has that happened? Why has that happened? What can I do to include more women in that? and it was the same with like radio play, like why are we only highlighting men's voices in this? So I think it's with whatever's specific to your organization. Like it could be that you're only getting applications from people from a specific background. I hope that answered it, but yeah, that's pretty much what it's very specific to you, I think. Yeah, to identify what the problem is. Has anyone else got any questions or things they'd like to discuss?
Rosie. Hello.
Do you find, I mean, apart from Grant, there aren't any men here. Do you find that men engage with your message and what you're trying to change here?
Yeah.
Surprisingly, yeah. With the Changing Herstory programme, we had, I think, more men than women in the training, which was really good. And the thing that I noticed, I mean, maybe it's just the landscape of charity and social enterprise stuff that is quite dominated by women. I've noticed this from meetings recently, that it seems to be. But when we did that training, I was surprised actually about the amount of men that did engage in giving us interviews and support, and also how much work they did afterwards to put the training into their practice. So a lot of promoters made sure that they were at least booking 50% of other genders other than cis men. And then also BBC Introducing changed their scheme as well to 50% for every show. So you would have seen a change in BBC Introducing since that workshop. So and there were 2 men on their team. So I was quite surprised actually for that specific thing. But in this, I think it's just very, maybe it's just the sector that you all work in, that we all work in, is quite dominated by women.
Any more questions? They don't. They can be very simple as well. Don't worry.
Yeah, maybe question here. With recruitment, we're quite a small company or organization, and so there isn't loads of recruiting that we can do. But we find that whenever we try to recruit, we just don't get enough diversity in the applications. And like last time, for example, the last recruitment process we did was to get new trustees, and we didn't have a number on it. It was like literally, you know, if we find the right people, we'll recruit them almost. And we put the advertising out, or the call out, incredibly wide. I think we've contacted about 40 Black and ethnic minority organizations specifically as well, to tell them about the call, as well as on our social media and newsletter and whatnot. But overall, the shortlist wasn't diverse enough already, which then made it really hard to recruit more diverse. And likewise, then the 2-3 people that we had on the shortlist just weren't, you know, compared to the others that had applied. It was like, yeah, we can't be tokenistic and take you because you're of color, or this other person just brings more experience or helps in that sense, whatever.
And with trustees, to be completely honest, like even our board is not diverse in terms of it's a really tough one in terms of when you're trying to get diversity into that. But I think, like, from my experience, like even our trustees, they're all people that I have some sort of a relationship with, that I've known and worked with. And I think also a lot of the people that apply for the jobs in YWMP, we actually have it's not just sort of reaching out, we're trying to communicate with individuals in that organization. So it's quite grassroots in terms of the people that do apply have a connection to the project already. It might not be a very big connection, but I think that's maybe is like building a relationship with the organizations that you want to recruit from, or the people that you want to recruit from. it's the same like when you're applying for funding, you would maybe call them first and chat to them to see if, like, you know, do we see?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
if you're trying to recruit people, I feel like it's really important to start that conversation with them, that you act, and it's not in a fake way either, like in a tokenistic way, that you actually are genuinely interested in their work and what they represent, and then you've built partnership before you recruit. I hope that helps. And Valentine, do you have anything?
Grant's next. He's got an emoji.
I've got other emojis I could use as well, but actually, funnily enough, I just reiterate the point you made, Zara, that so I once worked at a charity where there was me and 16 other women. I learned a huge amount, and you're right. I mean, my time working in the voluntary sector, I don't now, I just support it. But yeah, I do find, and particularly social enterprise as well. Funnily enough, as I don't know if any of you were on it, but I was on the IDEA call that the university has set up the other day, and I'm certainly, through this Escalate program, I'm probably supporting more women and, you know, a much more diverse group of people than ever before. But that wasn't the point I was going to make. It was actually relating to the trustee thing, because I wear a number of hats, and one of them is I volunteer to run a network that brings organisations together across sectors to share skills and resources. It's the Robin Network, in case some of you don't know that. But I was, and I'm just in that space, I was approached recently by quite a significant local voluntary sector organisation by one of the trustees, saying that they recognised that the board wasn't diverse enough, and they were hoping that I might be able to help introduce them. And I have to say, I found it really difficult. So I approached someone, and I'm confessing here really, but I approached someone without telling them that's why I was talking to them, saying to them that there was an organisation looking to strengthen its board. Would they be interested? And I made the introduction, and that person is now working with them. Now, the important thing is, just to justify it, this person is working in a relatively small organisation, has had some challenges, and I know that that person being involved in this organisation will be good for them and their organisation. So I justified it to myself because it was going to be good for them as well as the organisation. But I just wondered what you thought about that. You know, I think I wouldn't have felt comfortable saying you're a person of colour, therefore. So yeah.
I mean, I have.
Make me feel terrible or make me feel better.
No. I'm gonna. I mean, they might have something else to say, but I have.
I'm gonna rip him to shreds. I'm joking.
Experience of being put on a board of trustees and feeling like I was there, and it felt so good to be asked. And I'm not gonna like out them, but when I sat down and looked at the minutes from the previous meeting, it had my name with diversity next to it, and I didn't go back. Just saying. And I do partner and work with them a lot, but it just, I think that transparency is really important, and I can tell you did it from a really like real and honest place, and like that they were a really good match. But yeah, I think mentioning it would be no harm, and there's no harm in, like, getting things wrong either. You know?
Yeah, like a company, like any group that is honest about, look, it isn't, we want to be inclusive, we are on a path. It isn't a thing of we just want to look, we just want to have one person, but we want, if I can tell that I'm asked to join, because then my opinion will be valued, and it isn't to give like a feeling of, yeah, this is a change, but there is they've recognized an issue, and it is it isn't just because of my skin color or my ethnicity or because I'm different that I've been brought in. It's because of my skill set and my experience, and there is that level of respect. I'm able to be comfortable joining.
I definitely, sorry to interrupt, but I definitely understand that. But if you go back to Zara's experience, my concern is that if I'd have said to this person, this is the reason I'm talking to you, they would have viewed it the way you both have just reflected it. In other words, I'm only being approached because now the organisation probably is only approaching or looking for someone partly for that. But I'd like to think they want a trustee because a trustee is going to contribute in whatever way, no matter what their situation. But my decision was, I believed it was good for them and good for the organisation. And it sounds awful because it makes me sound as if I'm being righteous, but that's my concern. If I'd have actually said, the reason I'm approaching you is because of this, they might well have thought, well, I'm only being asked because, and whereas I wanted them to be chosen for the reasons that I felt were important.
Yeah, no.
Do you know what I mean? I'm probably
It's
trying
quite
to make myself feel better, really.
You're put in a position where you sort of had to sell it to them in a way, or like,
Yeah.
which is not really fair. But I think mentioning it like as a thing that's what they want to achieve, but also how you think they're a good fit. I think it can be said in a way that people might, and like I would have taken that really well if someone was like, yeah, you're really good and we think you'd be a great fit, but it was more just like
it was hidden.
Yeah, it was hidden. It freaked me out a bit, but yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, Grant.
You're not a bad guy, don't worry. You got your friend a job and that's great. We love employment.
Hey Roz.
Hi. I think it's kind of a bit picking up on what's been said before, but I think what really resonated me was that thing about tokenism and it being diversity without inclusion. Because in a way, that's what it feels like we're talking about a bit, that if you're looking, I think there are a lot of organizations that would like to be more diverse, but it's about networks. And so I think in some way it feels to me like you've got to take that step back. So the example that Grant was giving, they were actually sort of saying, well, we're going out of our network. That's not part of our network, Grant. Can you go in there and, get that person for us? And so that sort of felt weird. But if someone's part of my network, then it feels very natural to sort of ask them or to speak to them. And so I feel it's my responsibility to try and broaden my networks. That is actually really difficult because I've got quite a few things against me. I mean, I'm older, I'm a woman, I'm middle class, and I have to sit in on things sometimes and feel uncomfortable. But actually, that's kind of what it's about. And eventually maybe, and I do definitely meet prejudice because of that. And you do have to be really sort of quite thick-skinned and just keep going. And then you do get to know people who, you can talk to. But I think it's really difficult. I mean, I suppose I'm saying it's about broadening our networks and that thing, diversity without inclusion. I think it's really interesting.
I think the networks, the people do exist and the projects exist. It's just that maybe they're not given the same opportunities. It's like when we were based at Fusion Arts for years, and like how much from afar we admired Aki, who do lots of work with Afro-Caribbean people in Oxfordshire, but then like their work wasn't highlighted half as much. And it's like, I'm sure that network, just going to have a chat with someone and like reaching out is really like the human aspect of our work that I think's missing a lot of the time. I know it's harder in this climate to go and say hey to someone, have a cup of tea, but it's just like a real genuine approach I think is really missing. And that's where things become really strange in conversation, because you're only contacting for a specific reason. But yeah, I agree with you about that with network.
And I want to add the thing about it kind of I understand sometimes people get exhausted by like it's quite overwhelming being kind of confronting specific prejudices and specific kind of systems and stuff like that. And I understand like for other races, it's like the everyday. And so one thing that I want to pitch, I think Sarah and I want to pitch to a bunch of things, is a bunch of organizations that are looking for is like training, getting stamina, racial stamina, because a lot of minorities experience their race every day. It factors into the people I hang out with, certain times that I'm able to go to places. Me walking into a shop, it factors into if the security is going to follow me around as well and check on things. It factors into my education, where I can go to and every single thing, I have to consider my race into it. And of course, that means, of course, that maybe I have a higher stamina to confront these issues because it's my everyday life. I have to do it, or else I'm not living. But I want to kind of pitch a workshop where it's like a gym, but everyone gets on their headbands and we train to have more stamina to deal with this, because I understand that, of course, when you're not confronting your race every day, or you're not confronting the privileges that you have, of course, it's like you don't have any glutes or muscles to restrain that. So yeah, it's normal, but training and being aware of it is a very good step of knowing how to change. Yeah.
I think, there's so much we can do. It's just about reaching out and having conversations that come from a real place, and that there isn't always an intention behind it. So yeah, I think
Sophie's next. Sophie, I saw your finger go up and then it went down and up.
All right. I mean, firstly, that's literally the only gym I'd ever join. So, and also, I don't know. I've been wrestling with this a lot, and I wonder, like, in which order to do things. Like, so one of the things that's been on my mind is kind of similar to your gym thought, but nowhere near as developed. Of like there's something about people having the ability to have an uncomfortable conversation, and like where do you start? Because some places I've worked have gone in on the let's have an uncomfortable conversation, and it hasn't really moved enough to action, and it's left people of colour in the organisation feeling really let down. Other places have kind of started with diversifying the board. Other places, like, everyone does a range of things, and I think the model that you put is really helpful in terms of thinking about it. I guess, I still often feel at a loss of like, what's the right order? Because it feels like there's a lot for people to do to educate ourselves. There's a lot for people to do to like, it feels a bit chicken and egg sometimes. I'm rambling, but I think, I don't know. I'd be really interested in your thoughts that if you have a bunch of issues in terms of like, and I love this idea of thinking about the network, but actually like being real about how we work in the world is often things that are based on your network, right? Like, so the starting point is having a genuinely more diverse network, and you have that because of how you naturally are and how you welcome people. So like, is there something about the starting point is actually like creating that environment and just recognizing it's going to take a long time to get there? Or are there other ways that mean that it's better? Ramble, but I'm curious what you think.
No, it was really great. No, I just wanted to say we're a little bit over time. So does everyone want to stay to like do a bit?
It's okay if you can go, if you want to go.
If for like another 5-ish minutes. If you need to go, just go though. There's no
judging.
Don't be hurt by that. No, I think the network idea is seriously the best way, because I think we can all individually do work, but it's not going to be making as much difference. And like one of the main things, because like YWMP isn't that connected to the council or the university or anything, like we're quite a lone wolf in terms of how we operate, but I have noticed that a lot of the cultural partnership and diversity work within the council isn't diverse at all, and I feel like setting up a network for people to be able to really talk and start from scratch would be a really good idea, and it would just bring everybody together in those conversations, and then people can start to implement it in their own spaces as time goes on. But
also kind of starting off small. I feel like
small attainable
goals. I always think about the fact that I could, like, if I wanted to read a book by someone who kind of was the same race as me, same gender, was an immigrant, and like I only wanted to live my whole life feeding on media, like a film directed and starring and written, produced, and everything was only from people of my race. I would have like literally out to like a few months, and then I would need to like the world around me is mainly produced, like media, print and stuff is run by white male, like it's majority that. So I can't really, so throughout my whole life, I've grown up being fed, not being forced, but of course in school as well. In my class, I'm not the majority. There is other, and I would like become close with kids who were different races, because then of course we're like, look, we're kind of the odd ones out here, let's stick together. And so that is quite, I think for minorities, it's a lot, it's not even easy, it's just more natural for us to have diverse friends, because number one, I don't think there's that many South African people around in Oxford, but there's a lot of Asian friends. So like a lot of my friends are Asians, and that isn't because I'm like, yeah, I love Asian people. It's because usually in the room I walk in, the only other person who's not white, and then I'm like, hello. So, but one thing that you can look at is like things that you like a podcast. If you listen to a podcast, usually is the podcast, you ask yourself, are the hosts the same race as me? Do they come from the same upbringing as me? Is there another podcast with the same interests, but the host is maybe a person of color, or is maybe in a different community, has a different sexual orientation? They still like the same thing. It's just maybe they'll speak on their life in a different way. I listen to, it's weird, but I love listening to podcasts about football. And it's run by some very, very cockney, old middle-aged men, but they're quite respectful. You too, Grant. Yes, love it. I don't know why, but it's hilarious. But
I was just admitting to be an East End old white man.
Yeah.
They go on to the murder mystery podcast.
Yes, I love them. But
I've gone over even more now. I just want to, sorry, Valentine. I don't.
No, but listening to those different voices, it's the same thing. But even in the media that you consume, enjoying it from different, you enjoy the same subject, but not hearing it from a person who's from the same background, who looks like you and stuff, really changes in the small aspects. It drops down that fear of maybe I need to only approach people because of this. Like I approach people, I'm like, you like this, I like that. It's quite easy, and it kind of breaks down that barrier.
But I think that's a good basis on like how to build the network, because just sharing ideas and thoughts and what we're all like tapped into is really important. And I think that would be a great start. I don't know how we'd do it. We need money first, probably, and to not all be looking at each other on the screen would help. But I think it's the beginning of a great conversation, because we're all doing work to support others, and that's the goal of what we do, is to serve the community. So I think, yeah, it'd be a great start. Just having this conversation is the beginning, really.
Oh, Harriet has her hand up. I keep seeing these little notes.
Sorry, I put my hand up and then my boyfriend started blowing the hairdryer in the other room, so I had to go and just shut the door. So I thought I was going to be talking, it's going to be hairdryer noise.
I think this might have to be the last one. I'm sorry, everyone.
This is a really quick question, and I may be making some presumptions that are wrong, so please correct me if I am wrong. I was just wondering, this is me presuming that the East Oxford make up the population of the area is naturally a more diverse part of the city, and I was kind of wondering that since you've moved to make space and you're now in North Oxford, if that had kind of changed the makeup of the people that you've got working with you, or if you very much still like have enough of a reputation that people are still coming to find you, or if that had had any effect kind of on the way that you work, just the geographic location.
So if you look at the map of YWMP, the reach is county-wide, which is crazy in the sense that people are coming from all over, like as far as Banbury. But we have started to get a lot more people from the area and like Kidlington, because it's really easy to get in on the bus. And we still get people that are from all over town, so it's quite unusual that we have that mixture. And we haven't done any recruitment since we moved in, but we've still got people coming, which is really nice. And I mean, there has been a point where we were operating from 3 different locations because we didn't have a space, and people would travel to all those locations. So I think it's just about how dedicated your users are. I think the space has changed everything for us though. I mean, it is safer, but there's also some issues with noise, and just the community don't really get us, which has been quite hard. Not the building, but the actual
neighbours,
the area. So it's been quite complicated to go from like a bustling area where there is something dodgy happening outside, but you feel okay. And then being somewhere where you've got this tranquil canal and everyone's really chill. So yeah, it's quite different. But I think space is very much connected to, the walls don't mean anything. It's what the organization stands for and the people that are running it. I think that's the key, really, from what I've learned from being in like 10 spaces in 10 years or whatever it's been. Yeah, thank you anyway, everyone. I really appreciate your time, and thanks, Cag. And I keep getting the name wrong. It's OSEP. Okay, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you soon. And if you need us, we're ywmp.org.uk. You can drop us an email, and we're happy to do more training and support if you need it.
I'll just add to that before people go off. Thanks so much, all of you. And I'm just going to put a link in the chat just with future kind of OXLET webinars. And if you want to find out a bit more about the Escalate program, you can go to that link. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.